The 49ers season is over. The Rams know who they will be playing if they win today in Chicago. The Rams could be losing 2 key coaches. They make some roster moves. And I'm going to tell you exactly how the Rams are going to beat the Bears today at Soldier Field in Chicago. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and even to support every single episode, drop a like, drop a comment. Podcast listeners, write us a review, read on the show. My name is Doug McCain. Friends call me D-Mac. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've covered LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation, the LA Sports Report. I done NFL radio for Westwood One. Today I'm flying solo, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, will be back tomorrow to break down this one with me. But on today's episode, it's a game day edition of Locked On Rams, and we are breaking down exactly the path to victory today. Also, how the Rams could lose a couple of key coaches. Where are they going? Who are they? What that could mean for them in the draft as well. And then we're going to start with who the Rams are going to be playing if they win today. But first, today's episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, so the NFL playoffs, they've been great. Every single game feels like it's come down to the wire or it's ended up in overtime. You're getting great plays. Well, that was not the case yesterday. We got a clunker in Seattle where the San Francisco 49ers got absolutely boat raced by Sam Darnold and that Seahawks team, losing by a final score of 41-6. So it wasn't bang, bang, Niner gang. It's now bang, bang, Cancun gang. The Red Cowboys season is over, and now the Rams know that if they take care of business today, it sets up the trilogy. A third matchup with the Seattle Seahawks up in Seattle. You know the Rams would love that matchup, and an opportunity to put that loss against Seattle behind them, where the Rams had an opportunity to essentially lock up the 1 seed, lock up home field advantage throughout the playoffs, have that bye. And what happened, we all know. We won't talk about Week 16. The Rams lose 38-37 in overtime. They blew a 16-point lead. The Rams were 323-1 when they had a 15-point or more lead in the fourth quarter. Now they became 323-2. So that's who they'll face, and they have a lot of work to do before they get there. But when you look at the path that's laid out for them, it would set up a division opponent, a team they've already played twice, with an MVP in Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay going up against a younger Seattle team. And yes, the home team, you got to like that for them, going up against the 12th man. But we know that the Rams, they would really embrace that matchup. But there's a lot of work to be done before they get there. Now, the Rams did announce a couple roster moves. They activated from the practice squad standard elevation safety Tanner Ingle and inside linebacker Elias Neal. And not groundbreaking moves or anything like that, but that was the elevations. Now, when you get into this one, we talk about this matchup and where the Rams are at and the Bears and these two teams. There's mostly advantages for the Rams. The Bears, clearly, they've got momentum. They've got juice. They've got a team that is really just ready to try to take that next step in their organization and do it in year one. And that's where I look at this matchup, and I've analyzed it all week. We've broken it down every single which way, but I think it's going to come down to these 5 keys. If the Rams have success in these 5 areas we're about to talk about, they are going to win tonight's football game. And the number one thing I think tonight, with the elements where it's going to be freezing, and I see people out there, it's a West Coast team going into Chicago, and Caleb Williams has played in these elements more recently. Sure, but let's not act like this is Cool Runnings, and it's the bobsled team going from Jamaica to this cold area, and that they've never done that, right? And they're all wearing the parkas, and they're all freezing. No, these are guys that have played all around the country at their college years. Kyron Williams, Notre Dame. Blake Corum, Michigan. I mean, just the list goes on, right? And then, of course, you got the toughness factor of Matthew Stafford playing most of his career with the Detroit Lions in the NFC North. And yes, his record in those games, it's certainly a mixed bag to bad, essentially, in certain spots. But I'm not overly concerned about it just because I will bet on the toughness of Matthew Stafford. And when it's a cold game, when there's elements, the team that runs the football with more success has the bigger advantage. And both of these teams have shown the ability to run the football this season. But we're going to start with the Rams, because the Rams, they do have an advantage in this one. And for starters, you're getting right guard Kevin Dotson back. K-Dot is going to be in the lineup. That ankle's feeling fine. Did not play against the Carolina Panthers because they felt like they could win that game, get him some extra rest, and have him be a full bore, full go for the rest of the way. Now, the Bears defense, they've allowed the second most yards before contact in the NFL this season at 1.9 yards. But since week 10, they're allowing 2.8 yards before contact. You look at other metrics, the adjusted line yards. Their adjusted line yards in the running game is the best in the last 30 years for the Rams. Since week 10, the Rams 2.64 yards before contact. And you look at Kyron Williams for starters. That is 1A. Only James Cook has more runs out of inside zone and duo this season than Kyron Williams. He's running out at 60% rate. And the interesting thing there, though, the Bears, they allow the 7th most yards per carry. And they're not necessarily bad in that. They're actually, they do a pretty good job at defending man and duo and inside zone. Like, if the Bears are going to have success against the run, it's going to be against inside zone. Where the Rams have a bigger advantage, I think, in this one is with Blake Corum and the potential of having explosive runs. The Bears allow the 7th most yards per carry on outside zones, and they've allowed the 5th most yards on explosive plays. The Bears allow the 6th highest explosive run rate on defense. And Blake Corum, he's second in the NFL in explosive run rate on outside zone concepts. He is really good at finding a way to cut back and getting extra yardage and getting to that second level. Since week 7, Blake Corum is 12th in the NFL in explosive run rate. And with running backs that have had at least 100 carries, he's up to 6th. So if the Bears are going to have success, it's going to be on the inside, and it could be against Kyron Williams, but that's where the Rams developing Blake Corum, drafting Blake Corum, having them be this 1-2 punch, having them be this two-headed monster, they have running backs that do different things well. And tonight, I think we could see Blake Corum in those spots get some big gash runs. And it's also going to help them in the passing game. You're going to give them some matchups with Puka Nacua, and where you see Puka in the slot, that's an area where Puka is going to eat. I think the next big key is have Puka a primetime Puka game. like we've seen all season, him come up big in these spots. The Bears are 30th in the NFL at EPA per slot target. So the Rams should be able to run the football with Puka Nacua in the slot, and with the success of that, it opens up Puka in those situations to get those crossers, to get those mismatches, to use that physical style that he has that's so unique. And that's where the run sets up the pass in this one. I don't want to see the pass set up the run. I want to see the run set up the pass in this one and dominate that line of scrimmage. That brings me to our next big key: 13 personnel, 12 personnel, loaded packages. Last week against the Carolina Panthers, we didn't see a lot of that from the Rams. They diverted from that, but that has been one of the big stories this year with that Rams offense. And the evolution, the next chapter in it, has been the use of multiple tight ends, has been the ability to show these heavy packages and dominate the line of scrimmage. Now, the Bears, they just don't have those dudes up front to stop that. I mean, when the Rams are in heavier packages out of nickel, if the Bears match that with nickel, the Rams offense is going to dominate in this one. And the Bears are without TJ Edwards. He's not going to be in there. So we'll see if they can dominate from that standpoint and take advantage of that. It's going to let the Rams just go on the edges and find a way to manipulate those parts of the field. So offensively, I think that is just the area where you look at the X factors, right? You look at Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua. It feels like you know what you're going to get from those guys if Stafford doesn't turn the football over, right? But the running game, not only do they have to prove tonight that they can get the job done, but also will Sean McVay lean on it? And that's where I think this whole idea about the snow or potentially the cold weather and all this stuff, what people I think aren't mentioning is how the Rams are dynamic in the options they do have. There's optionality for them as far as how they can move the football down the field, how they can score points. And I almost view the weather as a positive for the Rams because I think that's going to force Sean McVay's hand into committing to the run. And that's something that we know if you're going to spot the pimple on the supermodel, that's certainly it for Sean McVay, is abandoning the run when we know they're, one, having success, and two, that's a way to control the game, control the clock, and limit possessions for a Bears team that has the potential to score points against this Rams secondary with Caleb Williams in those explosive plays. So I look at that as, hey, that it's going to make sure the Rams are zeroing in. Now, you also look at the other side, and you look at Caleb Williams, and it is the Caleb conundrum, as I'm calling it. The Bears are without their starting left tackle. We have seen the Bears really looking at trying to take advantage of his strengths. And Ben Johnson has had his fingerprints on this offense all year. To his credit, he's taken Caleb Williams to the next level. But the number one thing you have to do with Caleb Williams is you've got to keep him in the pocket, keep him from getting out of structure, and that really is the biggest difference. It really, truly is. With Caleb Williams, if you not only keep him, it's easier said than done, right? But that's where I think the most important part of this game is in the trenches on both sides of the football. If the Rams can win up front on defense with the front four, with that front seven, with the edge rushers containing, and when they do get their hands on Caleb Williams finishing the job and staying home, that really is just going to be monumental. It's going to be absolutely humongous in this one just because that's where he thrives. He thrives there. And you look at the explosive plays. That's what concerns you. The Rams have allowed the second most explosive passes over the last 6 weeks. We saw it against the Cardinals. We saw it against the the Falcons really with Bijan Robinson getting explosive. We saw last week Quentin Lake, them attacking him and trying to manipulate him. We saw that, right? And I think with the Rams, you need to make sure that the way that you kind of go after it, you can't allow them to take advantage of those moments. Because Caleb Williams, he's got the fourth most passing yards this season on passes of 20 or more yards. He ranks fourth with the most yards on short passes, but where he really struggles is intermediate throws. He's got the fifth worst completion percentage on intermediate throws. He's right there with Bryce Young. So the key with him is to try to blow up those screens, blow up those short passes, and then stop him from getting outside the pocket and pushing the ball downfield. Because that's what he's going to try to do. Because we know that even if the Rams flush him out of the pocket, which they have the ability to do, he's got the second lowest pressure to sack rate in the NFL, meaning that, hey, if you pressure him, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to end up in a sack because he's so elusive, he's so slippery, he's strong, he's athletic. He also leads the NFL with big-time throws while under pressure. So that's the game right there on defense. Is he going to have his cape on tonight? Is Superman going to have his cape on? Can you get to Caleb Williams? And when you get to him, can you get him to the turf? Because that's what he's going to try to do. He really is at his best when there's chaos. And he's operating in those moments. And he's breaking out of the pocket. He's out of structure. And he's trying to get those big moments. And that is where the Rams, they need to try to find a way to get to Caleb Williams in those situations, because he's ultimately going to determine if the Bears are going to score points this game, right? You're not going to, even though the Bears, will talk about their run game here in a second, they can't win against the Rams just with their run game. And that is certainly an area where they're going to emphasize, but it really starts and ends a little bit with Caleb Williams as far as if he has a bad game in the fourth quarter especially, you feel good about their chances. But he's also a guy, too, that there's so much high variance where he could struggle, and then he comes up big in the fourth quarter. That's why it's important for the Rams, if they're going to get out to a big league, to be all gas, no brakes. Keep your foot on the pedal and make sure that you're not giving him an opportunity to be Superman, to come back and be the Iceman and be the comeback kids, right? You just can't have that. You really, truly can't, and that's why it's so important. Now, the other thing, too, with Caleb Williams is, like I said, if you keep him in the pocket, that's going to be the big difference. He has just 5.5 yards per attempt when he's pressured. Per PFF, it's the 29th among qualified quarterbacks. He's 65.9 on his passer rating when he's pressured. That's 28. So if you pressure him, he's not a great quarterback. If you pressure him consistently, he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the National Football League as far as starters go. So will the Rams get after it? Will they win their battles up front? And when it comes to the pressure last week, that was kind of the big key right there, is can he get to him? And then the other thing, too, is you look at the run game for the Bears. The Bears' run game is something that they're certainly going to lean on. And that is going to be of the utmost importance tonight, is guys like DeAndre Swift. We saw that Bears team last year. They were struggling with the run game. DeAndre Swift broke off a 36-yard touchdown run. The Rams ended up losing that game at Soldier Field. And this is a Bears team that really is designed to run the football. It's been their biggest strength as an offense as far as overall consistency. They have a 48.5% rushing success rate. They're 0.4 EPA per rush. That's fourth in the NFL. But I think on the flip side, this is a Rams team that spent all offseason trying to address that issue by bringing in guys like Poona Ford, with Chris Shula making it a point of emphasis to stop the run. and they've done it for the most part this season. You had some hiccups along the way when Poona Ford was either out or not fully healthy. We saw it happen with Bijan Robinson and the Kenneth Walker 58-yard run. But for the most part, those have been blips. They've had success not just stopping running backs as far as tackling goes, and it's going to be a big game for Nate Landman, Omar Spades to make those tackles in space, but also just being able to minimize that. And I think last week was a really good sign with Chuba Hubbard averaging 3.5 yards per carry, Rico Dowdle 1.8 yards per carry. That was a positive sign. Now, the Rams' stuff rate and their ability to make negative plays in the run game, that's not one of the best in the NFL. They're actually one of the worst in the NFL at creating those negatives, but they have a 37.6% rushing success rate. That's sixth in the NFL. So even though you're not getting those big negative plays where you're blowing up the line of scrimmage and making big tackles behind the line of scrimmage in the backfield, you are able to stop the run with consistency, even if it's after a couple yards here and there, and you're giving them like 2nd and 7 and 3rd and 4 and things like that. They've shown the ability to stop the run. And you look at some of the recent numbers on that, it's a little inflated. It's since week 14, they've allowed a rushing success rate of 36.9%, and they're ranking 23rd in rushing EPA. So a lot of that has to do with kind of the explosive runs with Kenneth Walker, Bijan Robinson, like I talked about. So those numbers are skewed a little bit. So that's kind of the big key right there. Another one, we talked about Quentin Lake, though. I mean, Quentin Lake is going to be one of the big X factors in this game. We could see a matchup with Luther Burden, and the Bears receivers, they move around. They do. And Burden, he's going to line up on the outside. He's going to line up in the slot. It's definitely going to be a challenge for this Rams secondary for sure. It's why it's pivotal that they're not in coverage for more than a couple seconds, right? I mean, that's the biggest key right there. But Lake needs to try to limit those explosive plays like you're talking about. And Burden, he didn't do much against the Packers in the wild card round, but it's that speed and that explosiveness that makes him a player you always have to account for. And with the Rams struggling against the Panthers receivers the way they did at times, that's the matchup you're looking at. Is you got to circle that one. Colson Loveland, he's essentially a receiver. He's essentially a potential high-level receiver there. That's why it's going to be huge there. And the secondary in general has got to go up and make plays. And winning up front, I look at Kobe Turner to have a big game against Jonah Jackson, because Jonah Jackson really turned things around. He's had a major resurgent year with the Chicago Bears. He is really good at pass protection, and that's going to be an area where you have to go in there and win and make sure that this is a team that really you impose your will against early, and you set the tone early, because there's a couple ways the Bears could get in this one. There's a couple ways they can win this game, and one of them is causing turnovers, and you also, if you keep it close in the fourth quarter, they've shown the ability to come back. So, of course, it goes without saying in most games you want to win the turnover battle, but especially against Chicago Bears, you want to win the turnover battle, because even though they lost their turnover battle against the Packers, they still found a way to win. But they lean on their defense leans and relies on turnovers to be successful. Like, that is the way they do it. They lead the NFL in turnover differential, plus 22. That's 5 more than the Houston Texans. 33 turnovers. And of those 33 turnovers, 23 interceptions. So the game within the game is not just a turnover battle for the entire game as far as causing turnovers, because they lost a turnover battle against the Packers, but it was, can Matthew Stafford, can the offense avoid turnovers, because that's what leads to scoring more or less points in this one, right? So that is the big key. There are 33 turnovers, 23 of those are interceptions. That leads the NFL. Kevin Byard leads the Bears with 7 interceptions. Nashawn Wright has 4. Those are guys you want to make sure you're keeping away from. They're without TJ Edwards, but Tremaine Edmonds has 4 interceptions. They're 26th in defensive success rate. 26th in defensive success rate. They absolutely rely on turnovers. And when they do get a turnover, just one turnover, not even just winning the turnover margin, when they get one turnover, they're 11-4 this year. So they don't have to win the turnover battle. They just have to get a turnover, and it improves their chance of winning. The only losses against the Vikings in week 1, the Packers, the 49ers, the Lions in week 18. So it's definitely an area where you have to focus. They're 1-2 when they don't force a turnover too. So if they don't force a turnover, they're 1-2. And more often than not, they're going to lose that game. So that's why it's so important for Matthew Stafford to be even more so protective of the football, to be careful, to be cautious. And, of course, he's a guy that there's some gunslinger in his game. He's going to trust his arms. He's going to trust his receivers. But in this game with the weather, you have to be careful with the football. And that's where Matthew Stafford, if we're just looking at the data, weeks 1 through 12, he had the 4th lowest turnover-worthy play rate in the NFL among qualified quarterbacks at 1.9%. But that 1.9% has gone to 4.7% since week 13, which is the 4th highest in the NFL among qualified QBs. So I look at last season, and I look at that Kyren Williams fumble. And yes, the Rams still had a chance to win late. And if it weren't for Jalen Carter blowing up that play, I think that they win, and I don't want to get into that, but Kyren Williams did have a key fumble in that one. Make sure you're not fumbling the football, and then I think Matthew Stafford not throwing interceptions, because this is a ball hawk, opportunistic defense for the Chicago Bears. And they just do things that they do these weird, magical things sometimes. Like, for example, there's some things that don't make sense. So they went for on 4th down 29 times this year. And that's another big key, is win on 3rd down, and then most importantly, too, win on 4th down if they go for it. Because they're not a team that's like the Detroit Lions or a team like that. They went for it 29 times on 4th down. It's the 12th most in the NFL, but they converted on a 51.7% rate. So that's definitely towards the top. So you want to stop that. And here's the thing. The biggest key to this one is if the Rams get that lead like we think they will eventually in this one, you got to make almost Cinderella turn into a pumpkin in this one. And what I mean by that is at some point it feels like the Bears' luck and the cardiac Bears have to kind of run their course this year, because the Bears have won 7 games this year after trailing in the last 2 minutes. 7 games where they've trailed in the last 2 minutes. And you look at where the Rams are at. All 5 of the Rams' losses this season have come after giving up a game-winning drive late or in overtime. 2 of those losses came after blowing 10-point leads in the second half. The Bears just won a game in similar fashion where they were trailing 21-3 in the second half. The Bears lead the NFL in fourth quarter scoring, 9.6 points per game. The Rams' fourth quarter defense, for the most part, has been good this season, but there have been those meltdown quarters like we saw against Seattle. And the difference, too, is the Rams are a much better fourth quarter defensive team at home than they are on the road. At home, they're averaging 3.8 points per fourth quarter. On the road, they're averaging 8.1 points allowed per fourth quarter. So the fourth quarter collapse they've had, Eagles earlier, and then the Seahawks in Week 16, they were both on the road. And they also gave up 14 points in the fourth quarter last week. So will this Rams defense have enough in the tank to finish the job? That's going to be the biggest key. And that's why I look at the Rams offense too, man. Like if you can make this a laugher, this would be a great day to do it. This would certainly be a great day. It's something that I would definitely feel good about, right? In that situation. So you got to stop on fourth quarter. So yeah, just to recap here, the big keys to the game, the big keys for the Rams winning today. And a lot of them are obvious, but there's also some nuance there too, right? There, a lot of these are ones that you could say you could copy and paste these and use them for any football game. You could use them for any football game, right? Like win the turnover battle. But why is it more nuanced against the Rams? Because the Bears thrive on turnovers, and that's when they win, right? So win the turnover battle, win on third down, establish the run game, commit to the run game, get pressure on Caleb Williams, wrap up and tackle when you get to him. And the Rams secondary is the big X factor. If he has time to throw, can you limit those explosive plays? But ultimately, I got the Rams beating the Bears. I'm calling it 28-20. So I look for them to cover on this one. But with this Rams team, you know how I feel. This is a Rams team that they could be playing a local JV team, or they could be playing an all-pro team, right? They could be playing a complete team of all pros, and they would win or lose by 3 points, right? I mean, that's kind of kind of where this team's at. You could be playing modern day, right? Or you could be playing the 85 Bears. You could be playing the 72 Dolphins. You could be playing the 89 49ers. You could be playing the greatest show on turf Rams, and they would win or lose by 3 points. The Bears find the wildest ways to win games, and the Rams this season have found the wildest ways to lose games. Let's make sure we don't have that conversation tonight. Let's make sure we're not talking about that being a theme for this season. Let's use that as learning lessons and fuel, and make sure that that does not happen once again tonight. And that's why I got the Rams winning this one and going up to Seattle with a chance to put that terrible loss, a loss that could go down as the worst of the Sean McVay era in the regular season, and one of the most franchise-altering losses in this organization's history. I love the chance that there's an opportunity to put that behind them, and we'll never talk about it ever again. But it starts with a win tonight. But coming up next on Locked On Rams, the Rams could lose 2 coaches. I'll tell you what that means for the Rams. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. And here's a reminder. Join us on the Everydayer Club. That is the ad-free podcast, wherever you get your podcast, no commercials, and you get exclusive access to the Discord channel where you've got tons of Rams fans talking ball all day, every day, 24/7. I'm going to be chiming in there, too, getting specific things to give you guys shout-outs on the show, too. So when you go there, I'm going to get your username. If you got some questions, we're going to have a mailbag episode. You can comment on the show, and I'll give you guys a big shout-out, too, which would be pretty awesome. And it supports the show, and it supports the channel. So go to LockedOnRams.supercast.com. to join that everydayer club. It's really, really, really an awesome way to just get all access to the show and support us, and also, hey, just become a bigger part of the Ramley, man. It just makes you locked in that much more. But here in our last segment here, the Rams again poached like they always do. Chris Shula and Nate Schliehaus, they both took interviews after the game planning was done, video conference calls with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was on a Pittsburgh radio show this morning talking about that, 93.7. What I say about Nate Schliehaus is like, this guy, he's the passing game coordinator, but I think he could be the next big thing in the NFL. I think his upside is certainly that. He's got the aura, the way he's kind of brought in some of these different concepts in the passing game, helped develop guys like Puka Nacua and working well with Matthew Stafford. He's just got that passing game guru vibe to him, that kind of that young, I'm a young star like a Sean McVay was. And I just think in this league, if you're looking for offense and you're looking for guys who can develop quarterbacks, you can start there. And you can. It's much easier to find a defensive coordinator than it is to find a guy that you can trust offensively to develop and just kind of be a part of your team. Now, Chris Shula is another guy that I think is going to get a head coaching job. If I'm the Miami Dolphins, how can you not hire a guy whose last name is Shula? But I think what really stands out for Shula is he's kind of taken this defense and he's done it without these big-name, high-priced players, right? I mean, this is one of the least expensive teams, the second cheapest, if you will, in the league, and you don't have these big, super free agents, right? He's not doing it with the Jalen Ramseys or the Von Millers or the Aaron Donalds. He took over a Rams defense after Aaron Donald retired, and they've been a top 10 defense in the National Football League. They have, and that is to his credit. I think he's done a really, really good job in doing that. And he's someone that really has kind of had that feel as a head coach. And the Rams defense, they're fourth in DVOA. The offense is first. You compare it to the Bears, by the way. Rams offense, first in DVOA. Bears is ninth. Defense, Rams fourth, Bears 25th. But look, this is what happens. And I see people out there, hey, D-Mac, why don't the Rams just pay their coaches? It's not that. It's you're trying to get the best and brightest that you can develop under Sean McVay, and it's only going to be a problem for the Rams when teams don't come calling and stop trying to poach their coaches, because that means that the Rams aren't having success. Sean McVay is not having success, and teams out there don't want the coaches coaching under him. So this is always a good thing. It's always a price for success in the National Football League. I think they're going to lose both of them. With Schliehaus, they're going to get some compensation picks, which is going to be good. But expect it. It's going to happen. And look, we know that we've seen this, right? You're used to this by now. I used to say a couple years ago when it was, okay, Sean McVay's on my resume. If you had ever had any type of link to Sean McVay in any way, you get a job in this league. I used to say if you sold Sean McVay a pair of shoes, you get a job as an NFL equipment manager. Okay, that's how important it is to be attached to the Sean McVay name. And by the way, it's another big subplot in this one with Sean McVay and Ben Johnson. And reportedly, Peter Schrager said that Sean McVay and the McVay tree was not happy about Ben Johnson and kind of that short handshake with Matt LaFleur and some of the things he was saying about the Packers. So, look, I mean, I think there's some added motivation. Not that he needs any more, but I guarantee the group chat's firing up. And they will if the Rams and when the Rams win tonight. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. I got Rams 28-20. The Rams beating the Bears and advancing to the NFC Championship game. I have 3 more wins I need from this team to be happy about this year. My name is Doug McCain. Follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. And until next time. Whose house? By the way, join us for the squad show. Michael Brockers, Gavin Carlson. We're going to break it all down right after the game. Give it double whose house. Whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.